Hi, this is the artist formerly, currently, and foreverly known as John Seaton, and I'm here to talk with the Enrons about your new favourite song, No Trouble.
Hello and welcome to Your New Favourite Song, a podcast brought to you by the Enrons, where each week we will feature a recently released song from an independent artist. My name is Bernard Dennis and I will be your host. I am your host. Today, I'm speaking to John Seaton about his recent release, No Trouble. Hi, John.
Hello and welcome.
And
It
welcome.
feels weirdly refreshing.
Yeah, a bit of deja vu.
But definitely the first time we've ever tried to record a podcast together.
That's
hasn't happened previously. We'll
No.
not speak of any recording difficulties. Let's move on.
Let's move on. We're
Mistakes
friends.
were made.
We've learned from them. And
Exactly.
now it's your turn to make the mistakes this week.
Exactly, yeah. Don't tell them how many times I did the intro. Twice, by the way.
Twice. Wow. The first time was almost good.
Yeah, I know. Almost good doesn't cut it though in this business.
That's
know
very,
that.
very true. We know that. It's a hard business. So, John, for the people who didn't hear the first recording, can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from,
Yes.
and what you do in your
Yes,
normal
I can.
life?
In my normal, weird life. All right, let's condense it down. I'll go right back. So I picked up guitar when I was about 14, 15. Didn't know how to tune it for about 6 months. Learned how to tune it. Started writing songs. Formed a band. Band split up. All went to music college in the middle. Formed a band there. Left. Band didn't work out. A friend who I went to music college with said, hey there, John. Would you like to work on cruise ships and in covers bands? And I was like, yeah. But did that. Learned to play 3 sets every night for 6 years. Kind of got a little bit of burnout.
Yeah.
Got a little bit bored of playing covers. And then quit all that. Met some of my brother's friends at a festival, and I was like, "Where do you live? You're really cool." They're like, "We live in Brighton," so I moved down to Brighton with the hope
Which is where you are now.
restarting, which is where I am now, with the hope of restarting my own individual, independent music career. Didn't quite go to plan because whenever you meet new people, you want to go out for beers, and then before you know it, 3
Yeah.
years passed. But kind of end of October last year, decided to get my head straight and just focused on writing again. And here we are hang on, what are we now? Oh, it's nearly been a year. Wow, it's October. I keep thinking it's like May, but it's not because there was this virus thing and that threw off my calendar. But yeah, essentially that's me up to date. So I've always written, I always say this, but I've always written, but I think I've never been more focused in making my own music and creating, sounds really poncy, I'm going to say it anyway.
Go for
creating my own art, I guess.
Well, nothing poncy about that.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. I just feel really, I don't know why. I always feel really slightly uneasy with talking about art, and it's normal, I guess, but there's that, I hate that idea of like, I'm going to go deep. Last time we tried this, I went deep about 20 minutes. I've got to last about 2 here. I just think that idea of like there's no superiority with art or music or anything like that. Like if you're making something, if you're making music, it doesn't make you on a higher echelon than anyone who isn't. But it's just, that's my outlet. And that's essentially that's the thing that I love doing. And I feel like sometimes I feel a bit nervous that people think, oh, you make music, you must think you're better than me. But it's not like, as I said, I say to everyone, stream of consciousness here. As I say to everyone, like, I'm a music fan first. I love listening to music. Like that is the joy I get from music, and creating music is the same as anyone who just sticks on the radio and likes a song, right? And that's kind of the fancy word ethos that I have in terms of like my writing. Like I've got to enjoy it. And if other people connect with it and enjoy it, then that's a bonus. Like if anything else happens with my music, that's the cherry, the treat for me.
I think it's not even a bonus. I think it's almost a prerequisite.
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy what you're doing, then who else? Or if maybe not enjoy is not the right word, but if you're not connected to it yourself in any way, then how can you make sure that? How can you think that anybody else is going to be connected to it?
It's very true. I think that comes back to kind of the reason why I came off from working in covers bands and on ships and the like. I didn't feel connected to it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, there's songs now that I can't listen to because I've played them like 300 times. Like, I'm not going to name any names. Moon River. But other than that, like, when I hear that,
10
like,
guitars.
I can't deal with it anymore.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Because I've just played it to death. Like,
Yeah.
and I never wanted to. That wasn't the reason why I picked up guitar. I wanted to pick up guitar to be able to share music or just enjoy the spirit of creation. Was Ponzi.
Oh, you ponce.
But yeah, exactly. Who knew?
Nah, not really. By the way, for people who are not British, we're both British, so there might be some cultural references and strange humour that you might not understand. But just drop me an email and I'll explain things that you might not understand.
There may be some things I say that even I don't understand. That is the nature of me.
That's the nature of the beast. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, John. So we're going to get into the icebreaker questions that I sent to you. Which is actually becoming one of my favourite parts of the show because people have such great answers to these things.
Let me say this. I was listening to my friend who you interviewed last week, Telco.
Oh, yeah.
I was listening to his podcast and it struck me like, it's true of all the podcasts, but there's never the same answer. There's always a different answer. I was fascinated by him talking about The Cure and just... That's the beauty of these podcasts. I'm going to plug you now, even though I'm on your show. I'm going to plug you anyway. The beauty of it is that you never hear the same thing. There's always a different story, and like, I don't know, for me, like, and I know for loads of people that aren't musicians or anything like that, like, to hear like the stories and background of what created a song or what led you to do something, like, just fascinating. I don't know whether that's just a human nature thing, but I feel like this podcast really like hones in on that. Anyway,
well, I mean, that's for me. It's for me also interesting. I mean, I always have, from when I was really a little kid, and I'd listen to music and I think, what's it about? I was really into Bob Dylan at the time. It'd be great if they'd explain the lyrics, what it was about, the story behind it, which is really as interesting as the music itself. And, so for me, that was the reason to do the podcast. Here's such great stuff from people that are almost completely unknown.
Yeah,
and I think there are some great musicians and great artists out there, some great music being put out there that almost nobody will ever hear. And there are also stories behind all of those songs.
Absolutely.
So
there's nothing. You're 100% right. There's nothing that doesn't come with a story.
Yeah.
The dream, I guess, is when you hear those stories and then that song becomes a part of someone else's story, like a song you've written to become someone's first dance, or you've spoken of. Like, people probably never thought that people, when they formed a band, would be thinking about having them play at their funeral. Like, they don't even assume that. But when you write timeless music to make it become someone else's story, let alone your own,
that to me makes this kind of thing much more interesting, because the people who are out there making indie music are putting themselves much more into what they're doing.
I think that's true. I think that's music that resonates with people comes from a place of truth, right?
Yeah.
And if you are entirely independent, then let's be honest, if you're making music to make money to begin with, you're the wrong
you're on the wrong business.
But if you're coming from a point of truth as an independent artist and you're writing because you want to express yourself, it's almost it's so much easier for people to identify with that than we've put a load of money in this person because they got a nice voice. There's obviously exceptions, but like, you're getting with independent artists, maybe they won't reach as many people, but they're speaking as themselves for themselves, and like, goes back to what I said at the start, just being able to give that and share that gift of music.
Okay, so we've talked about being an independent artist. So let's say if you're an independent artist, so as an independent artist, you probably want a superpower. What would that be and why? Now,
I had an answer for this, which
you did
discussed before. And I said the ability to pause and slow down time. And then they come back to the idea of like, that's just time management, just use a calendar. And then I thought a bit more about this, Bernard. And I thought, however, wouldn't it be great if you could just pause time and sit there for 6 hours and write songs? And come up with 6 hours worth of songs, and 5 minutes has gone past. Because that would be really good. I love the fact that I can churn out songs quite quickly sometimes, and it can take me like 5-10 minutes to have something that I can then nitpick at. But still, that said, having that chunk of time that isn't taken up and you can just work on your, again, it goes back to working on your craft. Like, it's all, I think it's important, especially as an artist, to not be, I was like this when I was in a band back in the day, but not think you're too good. If you always think you can improve, that's kind of my ethos now as a songwriter. I always tell myself that I can get better. Like, you're only going to work harder then, and it's all experience, isn't it? The songs I write now are better than the songs I was writing 5 years ago. The songs I write in 5 years' time are going to be better. However, what I'd love is a stopwatch. Just pause that time and get there. Do you know what I mean? So
I used to do kendo, which is a Japanese sword fencing, and I was also affiliated with the Yagyu school of, or the Shinkage school of Iaido. And one of the founders, Yagyu Sekishusai, had a famous saying, which was, "Tomorrow will be better than the person you were today." And that's a constant, it's a constant drive to always improve, and also accept that you will never be perfect, that there's always room for improvement at whichever level you're at.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's, you know what, I think the thing is as well, it's a lot harder nowadays, because I think a lot of people, we live in quite generationally, especially with social media. I don't want to dig into social media too much, but everything's very instant, and it's very easy to see people suddenly be successful. I remember someone said recently, you see the bottom of the mountain online, like struggling and not getting anywhere. You see the top, you see the Kanyes and the Kardashians who have made it and got millions. No one's interested in the journey up the hill. No one cares about that. It's not glamorous or sexy, right? But the reality is, like, everyone has to go through that. You have to learn, and time has to go on to pick up skills and learn and develop and get there. But it's just not very interesting to put that online, is it?
No, nobody wants to see a Sisyphus pushing his rock up the hill and getting almost there, and then seeing the rock run down the hill again and have to push it back up again.
We have a very sort of jarred opinion of what the world is based on this very your top or your bottom. Like, there's no sort of graft there, but of course the reality is there is graft there. I just think maybe people aren't as susceptible to wanting to put that work in nowadays.
Who knows?
Just a thought. Leave with the listeners as they listen, maybe on a bus or a train. Day to work.
That's your thought for today. Yes. So moving swiftly along to the normal characters, is if you were the 8th dwarf, what would your name be and why?
My name would be Nonsense, because I am full of it. I don't know. I've always been stupid and enjoyed making people laugh. And someone said this to me. I was on the phone to songwriter today, actually, chatting to him, and he said, like, the music's really good and it's really deep and meaningful, but you're funny. Like, you're a bit stupid, and people enjoy that. People say that to me. Like, I'm not pretending. Like, this is genuinely how I am. Like, I am an idiot, and I'm fine with that. And I think, like, I don't know. I just like having a laugh. I just like having fun and being stupid. So
not taking things too seriously.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Like the Dubai log flume, huh? Because what is the scariest thing you have ever done for fun?
Gosh. Okay, so this was when I was on the cruise ships, funny enough. And the good thing about the ship, well, the bad thing was you worked every single night. The good thing was you had every day off, right? So when you went to places like on the World Cruise, we went to Dubai, and a group of like 10, 15 of us got off and went to this water park, huge outdoor log flume, like half pipe one. And we were like, right, let's all go on this. So we climbed up the steps to it. But about 10 minutes, I'm not joking, 10 minutes into climbing up these stairs, we looked across, we noticed we were actually above the log flume we wanted to go on. We were climbing up to an even higher one. And before any of us could sort of back out or say no, one in the group, Grant, listening, Grant, know what you did. Had already got
all your fault.
It's all Grant's fault. he'd already got into one of these. Basically, it's two vertical pods. Now, if you've ever seen the film The Fly or any other teleportation like device, there's these two plastic pods stood up. Grant was stood in it, and essentially you've got I don't know, 2-inch thick lump of see-through perspex holding you up, and they count down 3, 2, 1, and the perspex slides out, and you free fall in the slog flume. So it's like a full tube, and you drop for about 10 seconds before your rear end just hits the curve of it before coming out. And probably about 5 seconds into that, I genuinely thought I was dead. Like, I thought I'd gone. Obviously, I'm not. I'm talking to you.
Yeah, you were for the second time.
Right, exactly. There was a point where I just completely thought I was gone, and then suddenly you hit and you come out. Obviously, the rush is amazing afterwards. Like idiots, we went on it a second time, which is even more terrifying. Someone in our group, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Simon. Simon, if you're listening, you're mad. It didn't have the count. So normally you have the 3, 2, 1. But don't give me the count. So he's just waiting there for the drop to happen. For me, that's even more terrifying.
That's
That was
to not
scary.
know when it's coming.
Yeah. I thought I was dead, yet here I am.
There you go. See, we're going to talk about No Trouble, which is the song we're going to talk about today.
Great idea.
It's a great idea. And before we get into the technicalities, I'd like to maybe tell a little bit about the story of the song, what is it about, what it's about, and the kind of journey you wanted to take people on with the song.
Yeah, so it's a good one. I think with all of my songs, obviously, there's a degree of autobiography to them. And with No Trouble, it's quite a personal story. And really, I want to leave at least the majority of songs open to interpretation. So I'm never like, this is about this person at this time. Because that's just, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. But also, it's nice to have people relate, like we were saying before, make their own story around it or build my story into theirs. So I wanted, at the same time, though, there's still a story within the song that I wanted to tell. That's when I started looking at music videos and how to tell that story. And I think it was exactly when, I'm good with dates, end of May. I was out for a walk and chatting to a friend about, so I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how do I get this across? And we started talking about stop motion videos and Wallace and Gromit and
Morph
Run and things like that. Morph, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'll do a stop motion video. And then immediately I was like, no, this is a stupid idea. It's going to take too long. It's not going to work. And before we know it, I kind of have this attitude where with anything, if I've thought of it, if I've come up with the idea, I've got to see it through, because I don't want to be that person who just thinks of something cool and never does it. I will see it through to the end. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then we just set about, me and Clive, the cameraman, set about building up the props and putting the story together, storyboarding it and making it all fit and being able to tell this story of two characters. I suppose the overarching theme is growing up and growing apart. But like within that, I was able to create this little world, and it was really like a great experience that I never thought I could get with a song. And it kind of, not just the song itself, but being able to learn a new skill in making stop motion video and being proud of not just the song that I've written, but how it ties in and linking stuff with video and just learning a new skill was like just a great thing to do.
So I mean, can you take take me through a little bit about how you made the stop motion video? Because it's if you haven't seen the stop motion video, stop the podcast, go to YouTube, watch the stop motion video, and come back again. It's well worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, of course you would.
I am truly biased towards myself. No, I mean, in terms of creating it, so the stop motion's done on so we had the desk, the standard desk, a tripod and an iPad with a stop motion app on it. Nothing fancy. It literally just takes photos and then pieces them together. There's nothing too special about it, but it stores them all in one place. So I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So if something is 60 frames per second, then 1 second of filming is 60 photos, basically.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, for a 3-minute video, like it took a lot of, not, I wouldn't say trial and error, but just a lot of man hours essentially.
Yeah.
And things that you don't really think of before. There's the obvious things like an arm falling off halfway through shooting, or the trees in the background blowing over or blowing forward. But other things like the light, or not moving your hand away quick enough and getting a shadow across, and little things like that, you don't really think, you don't think about going into it, and then you're like, oh, okay, right, this is going to take a bit more time than I expected. So like the whole thing, from thinking it up, buying all the props, buying all the materials to make the props, shooting it, was probably about just over 6 weeks worth.
Whoa.
And that's with filming was about 20-25 hours. So in that, I booked a week off work so I could get it all done. But even little things like that, you can't do it all in one day, because the way where we'd set up the desk, you had light shining through. So if you took a 20-minute break and suddenly the sun was gone, or the sun came out for a minute, then you've got a completely different shot. And you'll see it in the video, there's a couple of times where it's just unavoidable, but little things like that, it's a lot of hard work, but then the payoff when you've done it, you're like,
it's amazing. And did you, I mean, because one of the things you're saying about lighting, I mean, if you've got a pro studio, you've probably got a whole set of lights in around you. But did you then, after you got all the images, did you then go and sort of post-process them to make sure that the balance, white balance and the brightness and things were more or less the same across all the images? And how did you do that?
A little bit. I did a little bit of post. I could have done more. Like, you can go back and see a couple of shots where the lights like goes. I could have done a lot more into that, but I'll be honest, it got to that point. I was like,
coming back to your superpower,
frame by frame. But I just literally didn't have the time, really. But the other side of it as well, I was chatting to Clive about it, is like, it's fine because we're not professionals, right? We're not professional filmmakers.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of being independent and doing things yourself that people have to respect. Like, so many people have been like, it's awesome because you, like, not because, oh, this looks so slick, but like, you did this, you actually did it yourself. Like, I don't have any experience in videography, like literally none. I didn't study this shit. Like, I just made it up as I went. And like, I think that's the beauty of things. Like, you go back to going off on a tangent here, but
go for it.
Watched a documentary on the beginning of like house music and electronic music in like the end of the 80s and 90s, when house music was getting prominent. There's all these drum machines that are suddenly being used instead of like spinning vinyl or discos. None of the DJs knew how to use them. They didn't know how they work. They didn't know the ins and outs because they'd just come out on the market. They were just playing them live and figuring it out as they go. Yeah. And if you listen back to that music, like, it has that like innate, almost caveman figuring it out,
amateur kind of sound.
That makes it majestic in a way, like, because it's unique. But as soon as you start, I don't know, getting really polished and professional about things, I don't know, for me it takes an edge off. It's quite like, for me it's like endearing when I see stuff like that, or when I hear people just going for it and trying to do something different. Like, that for me that's more attractive to me than someone who's spent hundreds and thousands of dollars making someone look perfect. Like,
but don't you get intimidated sometimes when you see when you see what is possible with the production tools that, not only for film but also for music, and the production tools that are available that just raise the bar so high. Even for independent artists. I mean, I got Billie Eilish does everything. She does in her bedroom, and when you think that's the level that somebody like that is setting, it's kind of almost intimidating to really do anything. I mean, how did you get over that?
I'll tell you how you get over that. It's a great TED Talk by a guy called Steve Lacy. So Steve Lacy is a Grammy Award-winning artist. He's worked with he's remixed Frank Ocean. He's worked with Vampire Weekends, like extremely successful. His first record that went platinum, I think it was, he made on an iPod Touch on GarageBand on his iPod. And he did on his TED talk, he talks about it. And he says, all I wanted when I was growing up, when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, all I wanted for Christmas was a MacBook Pro. That's all I wanted, and I never got it. It got to a point where it's like, right, what have I got? What can I use? And he talks about the kind of the maximum, the bare maximum, that's what it's called. He talks about getting the bare maximum out of things. It's not about money. It's about how much you use what you've got to your own ends. Like, how much can you rinse this? Like, every musician wants to spend 2-3 grand in a studio. We'd all love that, right? But also, every single musician has access to GarageBand, and it's free. And there's so much to explore with it. There's so much you can play around with. So I get it. Like, we all want to be able to have access to those tools. And I'm sure Steve Lacey right now is in a massive studio with huge speakers and a massive desk. I get that. However, you can still do a lot with what you've got.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the beauty. When I hear something that's amazing, and I'm like, oh, they only did that on GarageBand. I'm like, everyone's writing lyrics on their phone. We've all got the same phone. We've all got pen and paper. Like, if you've got a better quality notepad than someone else, it doesn't mean you're a better writer, right? Like, it's still the same basic tools. And for me, like, being creative, it's all mindset, right? Because there's loads of people with really expensive equipment who do nothing with it and don't know how to use it. There's also someone with their phone who's managed to put together an 8-part harmony on their iPod Touch in 2015 and win a Grammy for it. So you just got to make, literally, it's just making the best of what's around. It kind of goes back to the video, but like also, like, don't take this the wrong way, anyone listening, but like a global pandemic and a virus being locked at home has been really good for me. Like, because I've been sat here and I'm 2-3 feet at most away from my guitar and about a foot away from a notepad, and I can just write. And it's there. I've been put in a room now. We were certainly back in March. I was put in a room and didn't have a choice. Right? It's very easy to be distracted by technology and looking at your phone and checking, seeing what's new on Netflix to binge. But when you're put in a position where you've run out of those options, there's nothing going on your phone. Watch everything on Netflix, and all you've got is what is around you to be creative. That's when that magic happens. You start creating things not because you need to, but kind of like that's like your innate desire. And I think everyone has that. Everyone has something creative about them, I'm sure.
Well, it's funny you're saying about technology, and one of the problems about being constantly distracted is you never get bored. And I think boredom is basically the seed of creativity. Once you get, you start thinking, okay, what can I do to amuse myself? And then you start to get creative.
It's so funny you say that. Literally, it's so weird you said that. So the first time I met the producer, Steve Baker, who's worked on all of my songs this year, I said to him, the first time I met him, we went for a drink. I said, only boring people get bored. And he went, no. And he literally said word for word what you said to me. It's really freaky. It's making my hair stand back. He said to me, no, boredom's good, man. Boredom's a good thing. Because when you're bored, you start thinking. And when you start thinking, you start creating. I was like, yes. And it changed my ethos. Like, that's what things are about, man. It's okay to be bored. It's not okay to be not bored.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're not bored, it means you're being entertained by something that's probably outside of yourself, preoccupied, which is also okay. You could be in the zone.
Yeah, there's times. Let's not get this wrong. There is times to sit on your sofa like this one, eat a massive bag of Twiglets and watch Netflix. That is absolutely fine. I'm not dissing that. However, that is not. You can't do it all the time.
No. Yeah. Twiglets, huh?
Yeah, why not?
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, that's what you like.
Right. Okay. So we're going to get a bit into the song now, because you've talked about. No. Don't apologise. That's very British, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah, it's a British thing.
It's a very British thing.
Everyone's not British is listening. We apologise for everything. For example, if you're in a supermarket and someone bashes into your trolley, it's customary that if you've been bashed by the trolley, you turn around and say sorry. Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense. It's but it doesn't mean we're actually sorry.
No,
It's just kind of a thing to say to brush over awkward situations.
exactly.
Right. So that's the British psychology has been put in its place. So maybe tell us a little bit. I mean, you've talked about how you made the video. I mean, did you make the song first and then do the video, or?
Yeah. So the song was the first song I ever did write on a piano. So I'm definitely a guitarist by trade. I am terrible. I'm not saying this to be like humble, but I am terrible on piano. Right? I'll probably play about 5 chords, but I got this piano for free off Facebook Marketplace and took 5 of us to lug it into the house. But it's completely out of tune. Half the keys don't work. But I remember the night before. Oh, yeah. So the night before, I just remember this. The night before, I went out and got quite drunk, and woke up the next morning. I don't think there was any food in the house, and I was waiting for the coffee to not be too hot and burn my whole face. So I was just sat down by the piano and just came up the chords that is the chorus, the E, A, B. I don't care where anyone goes, no trouble over my shoulder. I'm heading out on the road. I'm not bothered, everyone knows, no trouble over my shoulder. I couldn't carry the load. But I wrote the chorus, put it away, had a cup of coffee, sorted myself out, and I said before, like, I can't just leave a section of a song and walk away from it. Like, it's always like OCD for me. Like, I have to finish it. I have to come on the verse, and but maybe it'll need changing. But I need a full piece of paper with lyrics in a song to feel like a sense of completion. So yeah, I had my coffee and I figured out some verse parts and recorded it on my phone, and then kind of left it for a couple of days. Went back, added a bridge in, and originally it was just a sort of ballad, I guess, and I was out on a walk again this was all during lockdown, pretty much, and the idea came to me then when I was out for a walk. There's a song by a band called Broods, who are from New Zealand, a song called Sucker off their new album, and it starts with this, I guess it's like a synth bass, just playing 2 notes of the same octave. Got the terminology then. Octave, so the lower octave and the higher octave of the same note going very quickly, going to make this almost like whirligig sound. I loved it, so I thought that's what to do with this song. So I kept the tempo is the same. It's still like 74, so it's still like piano tempo, that ballad tempo. Sorry. Put this bass, put this drum groove over the top, and then sent it off to Steve. And it's weird because it's actually quite hard. Because we were working remotely, we worked in the same studio, and B, because normally with a lot of my ideas, I've just got the acoustic, maybe I've got the rhythm part down, and the vocal, and I'll send it to Steve, and Steve really comes into his own in terms of putting a song and taking it a different direction from what you'd expect. But this was one of those that was probably a bit trickier, the recording process, because I kind of had an idea of how I wanted it to sound. It was all pretty much there. So it was then Steve being able to put his own mark on it, but still be true to what I had in my head. He got there, like it took about 18 different versions. But it was a lot. I'm not going to say it wasn't frustrating. It was just a more challenging approach to producing a track. Like I'm happy with how it sounds now, but it's one of those, like I'm working on a song with him at the minute that we wrote about 5 weeks ago, and I was like, this is one to record. Sent it over to him with no idea of how the drums would sound, and like he's literally just taken it and elevated it to a different place. I'm like, yes.
And these are all programmed drums, or is he really drumming?
So the drums are programmed. The drums actually in No Trouble are from a sample library that's released by a great artist called Bleachers, a massive influence of mine. Bleachers is an American artist who was also in the band. Remember the band Fun? They had one song. Night, we are young.
Oh yeah.
he was the guitarist in that band, but he produced his music. He did Lana Del Rey's last record. He's worked with Taylor Swift. Anyway, during the height of lockdown, he released his drum library of drum samples that he used. Said they're free to use for anyone in the public domain. Do what the hell you want with them. They're here. And I told Steve about this. He's like, great, I'll use my No Trouble. So all of the drum samples that did that song, samples from a huge producer by name, I can't remember his actual name, but check out the album called Gone Now by Bleachers.
Right.
Phenomenal work, like one of my favorite records of the time. But yeah, the drums are the same samples that he uses, and yeah, that was kind of it really. The piano that's actually on the track is played by a guy called Matthew Guest, an actual decent piano. Rather than my clunky out of tune nonsense. So he was on that. So yeah, it was a cumulative effort, I'd say, but I wouldn't. This is not at all, Steve, if you're listening, this isn't demeaning to you, but that process was a lot more challenging, I think, because of lockdown, and because when you have a producer as gifted as Steve at being able to create his own sounds and pathways for the songs, sometimes it's less in my interest or his interest to go down so much of a route. But then that's the other side of lockdown, right? We had all that time, we sat with nothing to do. Sometimes you can sort of overwork on things, but yeah, look, it came through in the end, and it's it's still great to hear. So
there we are. Right. So I mean, you've talked about this. I mean, you just said that you've got a new record that you're working on. I mean, what else is new? What can we expect in the coming months?
So much. So there's a song I am probably 95% finished with Steve. It's called Heavy Metal, which we have got horns in for, which I'm very, very excited about.
Real horns.
Real horns, yeah.
Wow.
So that will be coming out before the end of the year. I've got a remix of No Trouble, which is coming out later on in October. Might even be out by the time this is out. Which is very different, very cool way. So I don't know if I haven't said this to you before, but with all the releases this year, I've linked up with a different artist from a different genre to make a remix or a different version. So
okay, cool.
So with The Ghost that came out in May, I linked up with a guy called Jimpson, who I met on a music forum, who's like hip hop. So he made his own verses up. The Ghost Jimpson remix. Then for The Beach in July, I linked up with a great artist, I say folk maybe. She does some electronic stuff as well, but did an acoustic version of The Beach with Kate Ferris. And then for No Trouble, I have linked up with a guy from Berlin who I found online just making funny he sort of samples things from like computer games. People's voices and makes them into songs. And he put something online and just made me laugh. And I messaged him and I was like, do you want to remix my song No Trouble? And he's like, yeah, all right. I was like, oh,
cool.
Okay,
yeah, cool. And so what do you do? Do you send him the stem? Do you send him the stems, or do you send him...
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, I sent him I literally sent him, you know what, we hadn't even finished the song. So I sent him for like version 14 of 18 and the vocal stem, which was done. And then he just took the vocal stem and completely changed it. I don't want to give too much away, but it is called the artist is called Berlin Stoled. Called the Berlin Stoled.
Berlin what?
Remix. Berlin Stoled. Imagine Berlin, then an S, then told.
Berlin Stoled.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a couple of songs on there, but yeah, his remix is 80. I'm going to just say 80s inspired.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's really good. It's funny because it's quite a dark song. I'm just going to tell you.
Go for it. Spoil it. By the time
it comes out, this comes out, it'll probably be out anyway. I know what it's like, John, you idiot. So it's a play on the idea of the 80s and the sort of, he's taken what is quite a dark song and twisted it to being really upbeat. So it's like an upbeat poppy 80s version
of No
like,
Trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool.
Strangely works as well. I've just made a
Cool.
music video today as well.
I mean, if it, send me a link because I mean, this podcast we're recording it at like beginning of October, but it will probably be the end of November, I think, by the time it actually comes out. So by the time
it'll be out by then.
you're hearing this, so that song will probably already be out on Spotify, and we'll link that to. I'll put a link down there in the show notes so you can hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is new? What else can we expect from you? Let's say in the coming 3 months.
So October, by the end of October, you'll have the remix. In November, there'll be another single out. Then, depending on when, I'll say December, there's going to be another song. I've linked up with 3 other musicians. So I've done something completely different. It's not so much a produced song, but yeah, I wrote a song and I knew it needed a female voice on it. And yeah, I found someone online, linked up with her. So it's kind of like a duet, I guess. And then a really good friend of mine I met years and years ago, about 10 years ago, worked as a double bass player. He lives in Italy.
Ooh, nice.
So I sent him the track. It is just acoustic. Sent him the track, he put some double bass on it, and then forwarded that on to another friend of mine who plays drums, and he put some percussion and stuff on it. So I think that's going to come out before the end of the year. So that's exciting. It's almost like sort of acoustic band, I guess, that I've put together with people, some of which I've never met, and none of which are in the same room as me.
You sound like you've got such a lot of things going on that people will want to follow you, obviously, if to find out, to see all of this stuff. So where can we follow you on Facebook or Instagram? What's your favorite mode of social media, let's say?
Mode, like it's like a mode of transport. I suppose it is. It
is a digital highway. Yeah, the internet superhighway.
I'd say Instagram is probably your best bet. So at John Seaton Music. I live stream twice a week. Tuesday is songwriting and Thursday is live gig. It's really fun for me, because I can't gig anywhere else. So I get to talk nonsense with people online and play a few songs. But with Tuesday, with the songwriting, things are opening up a bit now, certainly.
Yeah.
Some way, shape or form. They might have closed down again by the time this goes out. But things have opened up a bit. So there's a lot of distractions, opportunities to go out and not be in. So having every Tuesday, at least for half an hour, I've got to be sat writing songs live in front of people and hearing those songs at the first, it's a very naked process, put it that way. So, but the good thing about it is that it gives me accountability, right?
Because but anybody can join and also help write songs or...
Absolutely. So I kind of do different setups. So sometimes I'll put something out in my stories and suggest some words, I'll put them in the hat. Mm-hmm. So there's one stream where I just was picked 5 words out and had to make them all into one song. I think there was dolphin, magic, gullet, giblets were all in one song. So there's various different things. Yeah, I kind of try and keep it exciting. And the same, say the word ethos again, the same ethos I have with like my music. Like it's got to be interesting to me. Like, I have to take myself out and be a listener.
Yeah.
The same thing with live streams. Like it's different every week. Sometimes I'll come up with ideas, or I'll just do a stream of conscious freestyle for half an hour, or we'll take words from whoever's in the chat. But I want to keep it exciting for me. Like I don't want to get the same as being on the ships. I don't want to be bored by playing things. So it's always aimed to at least make it interesting and ridiculous and hilarious for at least 25 minutes of people's days. So
okay, I mean, the other thing is as well, you're doing this as a part-time hobby, and it's probably costing you a lot of money. So is there somewhere we can buy merchandise, shoot some money, buy you a cup of coffee online or something like that? Where's your merch page?
That's a great question. Do you know what? I just don't feel I'm there yet. And that's not a slight against anyone, or it's not me being self-deprecating, but for me, I don't feel comfortable charging people or asking people for money yet. There may come a point where I'm like,
Yeah.
I've got this new range of merch, but if I'm honest, like this is going to sound really soppy, but I do mean this. Like, genuinely, I'm way more interested of having 5 people connect to my music than someone giving me a fiver. Like,
yeah.
There may be come a point where I've got such a large audience, so like, and there's a demand for people to buy merchandise or go down that route and maybe do like exclusive. I know lots of people do like Patreon and exclusive streams, but for me, I just don't feel like that may well change. But at the moment, like I'm just so like when people message me and say that song really means something to me, or do you know how good this is, or I've put this in the playlist and I've listened to it, like that's payment enough, Bernard.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. I mean, there is a kind of a self actualization part of it, is putting something out and having somebody comment and say they really your music touched them. And but at the other point is
it's nice
gear is expensive.
True, true, it is. I think for me, like if I'm completely honest, the way I want to, and this is so business-like, and I apologise for saying
Don't apologise for being business-like.
You're
not
screw the man.
You're not Michael.
What was I going to say? No, for me, like if I was to monetize what I do, then I'd want to do that from a songwriting perspective. So kind of it's funny you say like my aim of those conversations with people close to me, but certainly conversations with myself about how do I go from doing this in the spare 4 or 5 hours I have a day to making it my 10, 12 hours a day that I'm working. And for me, like I just want to, especially next year, like start making round in not just writing for myself, but writing with others. So I guess the way that I foresee maybe in 3, 4, 5, 6 years time, after I've got enough experience and enough songs under my belt, is to be like a full-time songwriter and to work with other artists and get a publishing deal and go that route. Because I think that I'm fine with songs being, I don't know if this is a word, but commoditized, being made a commodity at some point. However, like I'm quite honest in myself that I'm not there yet. I'm not in a position, I'm not experienced enough. I haven't worked with enough artists yet to be able to monetize my songs. Yeah. And I think in all reality, if we're all being completely honest with ourselves, very, very rarely, unless you're super, super die-hard music fan who spends 500 quid a year on merchandise, then the majority of people don't pay for music. Yeah. Whether it's, you might get the odd, unless you're a vinyl collector, and that tends to be a certain style of music. And the reality is most people got Spotify, right? And most people aren't paying more than their tenner a month for Spotify to listen to any music they want. And even then, that's not everyone. The rest of the market is listening to YouTube or just consuming music by listening to radio in their cars. So I think that the reality for me is that goes back to treat myself as a listener before being a musician is, well, I wouldn't music, like I'm not paying for music, so I don't feel like I kind of have the right to be charging people yet. I'm sure, hopefully, if I work hard enough and put a decent enough catalogue of my own stuff and work with enough artists, I'll get to a point where someone will give me a publishing deal and they'll pay 10 grand for a song of mine, or I'll get a song placed on the next Honda advert and I'll get $500,000 for it. But
would be nice.
Right. But again, it goes back to what we were saying before about being at the top of the bottom of the mountain. Right. I'm probably not right at the bottom of the mountain, but I'm certainly not towards the top yet. So for me to be really honest with myself, I want to get there, of course. But for me, I want to get there and do it full time by writing and putting out a collection of
working your craft,
working my craft and being celebrated for that. Like I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable any other way of doing it. I think that goes back to what we were saying before about being really honest and true to yourself. Like maybe I could go down the route of selling hats or putting together a Patreon or something like that, but I feel like I'd kind of be cheating on myself in a way in how I want to get there. And if I don't get there,
Maybe you will. Maybe the
will.
John Seaton mugs will be coming out with.
Who knows? But what? Maybe I don't get that publishing deal, right? And maybe I don't get that song on a Honda advert. That's fine. I can live with that because I know I've been honest myself, and regardless of what happens, I've wrote a bunch of songs that I'm really proud of. So,
but don't you also think that the way that you've got your Patreon, you've got Buy Me a Coffee, you've got you've got merchandising, it's actually a kind of a much more equalizing way of when you start out, you're thinking, I get this Honda deal for $500,000. But in fact, you don't actually have to have £500,000 or euros or whatever if you're getting a regular income from people who support you. Also a way of becoming independent. You don't have to wait for that one big paycheck, because if that doesn't happen, then what happens to your music? Or you just you stop.
I think I would never stop. Like, I would never stop making music regardless. But I think you make a good point there, and I think there's always that opportunity to pursue those avenues. And like I said, there may come a point where let's say I've got 1,000 dedicated John Seaton fans who I know every year will spend 20 quid on a vinyl and a hat. Right? Then that's me sorted, right? And maybe that will happen, but I'm less kind of concerned about building a fan base, really, as I'm more concerned about building a collection of songs and becoming a songwriter. I was really dead set on like making an album and putting an album together. The reality is, I spoke to a few people. I was like, when was the last time you listened to an album? They're like, it's like people aren't consuming music in the same way now.
No, that's very different.
Times are changing, and maybe I will go down that route and consider it, but I don't know. You kind of just got to go with what feels right. And for me, what feels right is just working really, really hard on songs I write, making them as true and as good as they can possibly be, and then building on it, and hopefully looking back in 5 years and going, glad I put all that effort in. Now I've got a steady stream of income. People genuinely want to pay for my songs. So
that is a great way to end the podcast. That's a brilliant quote. I've got one last thing that I want to ask you before we wrap the whole thing up. And the show is called Your New Favorite Song. So what is John Seaton's new favorite or favorite new song?
So I was thinking a lot about this. So there is kind of in the same music community and group that I met Jimson, there's these guys called Silent Natives, and they have just put out a song called Love It. And I swear, whatever religious deity you believe in, that song has been in my head for about 2.5 months now. It's kind of like, I'd say like Noel Gallagher before he went space jazz and kept writing decent tunes. Check it out. Great. I love they've got a great mix of acoustic, but somehow it's sort of similar to like Black Rebel Motorcycle Club have a song called Ain't No Easy Way, and it's a rock and roll song, but the rock of the guitar is just on these acoustics that are just rammed down your throat. And there's no like grunge there, but it's got this heavy acoustic feel. I can't really describe it, but listening to that song reminds me of them. And they're lovely guys as well. Silent Natives, Love It. Recommend check.
Silent Natives, right? Well, we'll stick that in the show notes for sure. So it only remains for me to say thank you very much, John, for your time again this week. And I wish you every success. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the remix.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernard. Always a pleasure. See you later, buddy.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you come away with an appreciation of the creative process, and more importantly, have found your new favourite song. All of the songs featured in the show are on our Spotify playlist, The Enrons New Favourites, and you can find all the links mentioned in the podcast in the show notes below. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please hit the subscribe button. If you want to help us to continue making and growing the podcast, as well as releasing new music, then you can either buy us a coffee or become a regular patron. See the show notes for details. If you're not in the financial position to do that, then you can also help out by leaving a rating and a review on iTunes. That really helps to increase visibility for us and for the artists on the show, and will benefit us much more than it will be a pain for you. Next week, I'll be talking to Evelina Armina of Marble Waves about their debut single, Through the Dark, from their eponymous debut EP. And this will be the final episode of 2020. More details next week. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
I'm not bothered, everyone knows. No trouble over my shoulder. I couldn't carry the load. We used to live it up whenever things got rough. No matter